First of all, good afternoon and a very, very warm welcome to our great conversation today, to everybody who's been kind enough to join us. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Chukwuma Wanzi, CEO and MD of Credit Direct Limited. And we're here today to hear from him some wonderful and invaluable lessons for business. Welcome, Chukwuma, and thank you.
Thank you, Patrina. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you to the leadership at Great Place to Work. I'm really excited and looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think, first of all, start by saying we're particularly honoured to have you here today because it's your birthday and wishing you well for today and the year ahead.
Thank you.
So, well, before the two of us get into our nice conversation for the next 45 minutes or so, I suppose just important for me to say that today, for the benefit of people who can't join us right now, we're going to be recording the session. And as I mentioned, we're intending to have a conversation together for around about 45 minutes and then invite you to ask the questions that we have time to respond to and we'd love to have in the last 10 minutes or so of the session. We're hoping for a fairly fluid session today, but at the heart of it are invaluable lessons for business, and there are a number of key topics that we might cover together around culture and values and direction, and particularly, I think, from our earlier conversations, Chukwuma, the power and importance of people and culture in terms of delivering on organisational success. But we shall see what our conversation brings. But probably enough for me for a moment. But I would ask that if you have a burning question as we go, please do say it or type it in the chat. But predominantly we will wait till the end for questions. But may I start us off by asking you to introduce yourself, Chukwuma?
All right, my name is Chukwuma Wanzi. Most people call me Chuks. I am very happy to be the managing director, chief executive at Credit Direct. Over the last 22 years, I have spent my career in different industry verticals. Interestingly, I started my career with the federal government. I had a stint in consulting in the oil and gas downstream sector. I worked in technology with a systems integration company. And over the last 14 years, I have been in banking and financial institutions. So I have experienced over 5 different industries, and my roles really have spanned around being finance person as chief finance officer in many of the organizations, but I also had responsibilities in strategy for technology operations and quite a number of functional areas within these organizations.
Thank you so much. And how would you perhaps describe your role at Credit Direct in a sentence, if you could? What's at the heart of it?
I think at the heart of it, I'll be looking at it. Firstly, I have the job of providing strategic direction for the business. I have a role to play as the leader of the organization. I think the need for providing the structure for people and other stakeholders, as well as key decision making, is what I see my role at Credit Direct at. So it's strategic direction, leadership, people and stakeholder management, and key decision making.
Thank you so much. And it's always lovely to hear a little bit about the leaders and what they're particularly passionate about in these conversations. And I just wondered, to put you on the spot, what would you say your proudest work moment across your career is? What stands out as something you're really proud of?
Thank you for that question, Patrina. I think it is one that I'll tell or weave around the story. I recall, I started my career in the civil service, but right after the civil service, I got a job in a consulting company. And a few months into that consulting company, where I was working like a backup to the CFO, there was a board meeting, and for some reason, the CFO couldn't come in. So here was I, new in the organization, and I was told I would make a presentation at the board meeting. So somewhat unprepared, I took on that responsibility. I stood in front of a very well-constituted board, and I did that presentation. For me, what followed thereafter was something that revolutionized my career and spread me into the executive phase of my professional development. After what was considered to be a brilliant presentation, I got back to my desk, and before close of day, I'd gotten like a triple promotion because the board considered that I was operating at a level higher than I would have. So that for me was extremely proud. I mean, it changed my profile within corporate world. It added some money to my salary pay, and overall, it set me on the course that over the next couple of years has been very rewarding, as my career suggests.
Wow, thank you. So a moment of bravery in a way. I mean, thinking, right, I'm on.
Yeah, yeah. I was scared for a bit, but I mean, I think I did overcome the fear, and it ended up being a very good day for me.
Thank you so much. Well, in our conversation today, I hope we'll be drawing out lots of, from your experience, what are the sort of keys to successful business in particular from your experience. And I imagine that we may be drawing a bit on the backdrop of Credit Direct. So it's a very familiar name, I imagine, to all of us, but how would you describe the organization?
I like to describe Credit Direct using 6 nouns, right? I think first, we're very entrepreneurial. I would say excellence is at the heart of everything that we do. We execute. We're big on execution, not talking. We execute on our plans. We're a high energy organization. We're big on energy. We commit the right, we put the right energy in everything that we do, whether mentally or physically. Empathy is something that I like to think of us as. We're very empathetic within ourselves as colleagues and to our customers, and evolution. We believe in the constant evolution of our organization, whether it's the people within the organization, our product ranges, how we're providing services to our customers, and the kind of objectives we have towards our stakeholders. It's always evolving in the right direction positively. That's how I like to describe Credit Direct with those 6 nouns.
Thank you. But yeah, so always change. So change is always happening. Change doesn't happen and stop. We're always evolving.
Yes, we're always evolving.
Word, isn't it? Evolving rather than change.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I spend quite a bit of my working week thinking about culture and the way things are done around here. And I was really interested to read a post recently of your first year in role, and you talked about some really powerful things that stood out to you. And one of the things that you mentioned was that culture is king. And I love that. So I just wondered if you could tell me a bit more about, I suppose, what's the magic of culture at Credit Direct?
I mean, I like to think of culture as the shared values, beliefs, and customs in the workplace that really makes it the workplace. I was reflecting on this conversation, and I said to myself that what makes Credit Direct a great place to work? And the way I deconstructed it in my mind is, you don't have a great place to work if you don't have great people at work. Without great people at work, you could have a great place for work. But what makes it a great place to work is when great people at work come to a great place for work.
Nice. Yeah.
It's the putting together of it. And that's how I see the culture at Credit Direct. One that leaves out the shared values of the business, but beyond leaving out, beyond taking the shared values for the words that they may represent, it's the living out of it on a daily basis that makes us a great place to work. So when we say that we are empathetic, for example, it suggests that how we are dealing with our customers, we put ourselves in the stead of the customers at every point in time. How we interact with ourselves as colleagues means I'm putting myself in the place of the colleague I'm saying stuff to, and so I wouldn't use the wrong kind of words. When we say we believe in excellence, it means we're looking out for even what many people will consider to be minute details that can be overlooked. but we are looking at building out a habit of doing things right and in an outstanding way at every point in time, and continually, evolving to make it even better. So for us, it's living out those shared values. Now, when we look at ourselves, we're a youngish organization. There's a lot of young people within the 23, 28 age bracket, and there's a lot of energy. So the question is, how do you draw from the natural energy from a youngish organization, and how do you translate it into a very successful high performance organization? So that interaction of the people, the workplace, the corporate objectives, and the direction we're going really makes us succeed. And that's where culture for us is king over time, and it's going to keep on evolving as we go along.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. So a lot of it sounds like it's about as you said beautifully, the great people and the great place to work coming together, and the energy of those great people, and using that energy in every interaction to live out your values and those shared values. What I suppose one of the things that always interests me is how an organization calls out if someone isn't living the values. And so I suppose the question is, how do you support people to make sure they know what the values are and then that they can live them?
I mean, at Trade Direct, we have an acronym for our shared values we call the 6 E's, right? And I, for one, make sure that in every communication, I constantly remind every one of those 6 E's. And like I said earlier on, beyond them being nouns or statements, they actually should be the DNA of everyone who works into the organization. So at the point of recruitment, beyond the technical competence, beyond that behavioral side of things, we are looking out if that person can imbibe these shared values and easily leave it out whilst he's in the organization. And so for us, it's extremely important to have that mindset. Now, you would always get people who may fall short, but we also have a mindset of supporting each other. And one way to do that is to be very clear in terms of what is expected of everyone. Sometimes people fall short of their expectation because they don't even know what is expected of them. So one of the things we do, we use the objectives and key results framework in making what is expected of everyone really clear to them, so that when you are falling short, should you fall short, there's also a process that helps you find your feet. Now, I think we have one of the lowest attrition rates in the organization, in the financial services space in Nigeria. And that's not because we don't have guys who fall off the pace. But when you fall off the pace, the organization is there to support you till you find your feet again. There'll be a couple of guys may never find their feet, and then sadly they will have to exit. But we have such a minimalist number when it comes to that. So the organization is there for you. And so when we say empathy is key for us, right? And I just want to stress on this. I mean, no one becomes a bad performer suddenly. And so very many times we are looking at the root cause of what has made this person drop off. And so long as an organization, we can be there for such people. And in very many cases, we've seen a transformation from guys who have dropped off the pace, who we were there to support, and we've seen them pick up and then begin to live out what we know they are capable of.
So very interesting, isn't it? Yeah, so it's clear expectations, and it's providing a supportive and empathetic framework so that people do succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you say that having this strong culture, this 6 E's, helps effectively execute your strategy? And I know execution is one of the E's, but
I mean, it really, really helped. I mean, we introduced the 6 E's at Credit Direct last year. And I think if we're just judging on the strength of the results we've seen 1 year later, one will be left with no choice but to see that cultural transformation is working. So, for example, we've seen profitability grow just shy of 70% in 12 months. We've seen our loan portfolio grow by 99% in 1 calendar year. We've seen employee satisfaction peak by about 3,000 basis points in one calendar year. We've seen, I mean, we got the Great Place to Work certification in the last 1 year. At our group level, in 4 categories where there were awards to win, we won 3 out of the 4 awards that were from 3 out of the 4 categories that were on display. And for us, it's really down to living out, what we believe those values are. And
Yes.
again, I'll say, so very many organizations have shared values for the sake of having a space on the website. But I think in our own case, we try to make everyone connect with it. And so at the executive level, at divisional levels, at departmental levels, at unit levels, we try to make sure this is part and parcel of everything we do. In fact, in our performance management framework, we have a weighting that constantly evaluates how you're imbibing these values in your day. So it's not something that you're losing sight of, and we see everyone represent these at different points during their work with us.
Yes. Yeah, interesting. Back to your beautiful phrase earlier, and they're not nouns, they're our DNA. So they're really lived. And it's beautiful to see, as I've obviously been in this field for quite a long time. Again, the essence here is that your really high business performance is backed up, and I would argue fueled by a really, really strong employee experience, as evidenced by your certification and high performance. So given that, how do you reward yourselves, I suppose? How do you celebrate that success?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we really do well at Credit is celebrate. And for me, it's a philosophy that says, if you've moved an inch, if you've made an inch in progress, then you should call it out and celebrate it. I think nothing is too small to celebrate. So we've met and surpassed the target. I'll give you an example. Last year, we had like our sales objectives. And for 7 out of the 12 months last year, we surpassed those targets. In fact, there was a period where for 5 or 6 consecutive months, we kept on beating the previous records. And people said, oh, aren't we going to get tired of celebrating it? And I said, no, because success begets success.
Yep.
Everyone gets excited about a new hurdle. And so it was easy for us to say, okay, you know what, guys, next month we're looking at doing this, and everybody says, come on, bring it on. Right. And then we surpassed it again and surpassed it again and again. And at every point in time, we called ourselves out, we celebrated it, we shared stuff on our communication platforms where we needed to buy ourselves a drink or eat a meal together. We did all that. And we think it's extremely important to celebrate positive wins. Now, we know that within context of organizations, there are peaks and troughs, right? So when you're at that peak, celebrate it, because when the low moments come, there'll be something that will energize you and give you that expectation to rise again. And that's how we think about it at Credit Direct.
Yeah, so it's nice. So that, it's maintaining that energy. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's lovely to hear. And, numerically, I know from having looked at an awful lot of employee data that recognition is typically one of the key drivers of whether people feel engaged and energized at work. And it's lovely to hear that sort of play out in practice, so that resonates and feels real.
Yeah, and sorry, Patrina. And beyond that, so I mean, one of the things we were also able to achieve was, because our board started seeing the level of improvements across the organization, things that would impact employee welfare became easy to present to the board and was easy to get out for them. So guys could see the rewards on that unit scale, but they started seeing the rewards impact employee welfare. It also added to the ease with which people were coming to work and delivering on their job. And ultimately, it led to superlative performance in the last 12 months.
So it's a virtuous cycle, if you like, a positive reinforcement. And
absolutely.
Yeah, so an easy case to make that people matter.
Absolutely.
Thank you. When I asked you at the beginning, moving slightly if we may, when I asked you at the beginning, what's the essence of your role? You mentioned strategy and structure and direction and supporting. I almost felt like you were saying, I don't know, but I felt like you were saying I sort of hold people and provide the structure and move it forward. And I know in chatting to you before, you said that clarity of direction, robust governance is key to success. What advice would you offer others to really engage colleagues in understanding their part in delivering on the strategy?
I mean, I see strategic direction as beaming a torch in a dark room. The absence of light leaves you groping in the dark. You beam a torch in a dark room, and then there's some clarity on how you would go. I think organizations that are successful, and I don't have any empirical study to back this, but organizations that are successful will be organizations where clarity is the order of the day. And for us, in very unambiguous ways, we try to spell out what it is we seek to achieve. We never get tired of communicating our objectives across all levels in the organization and providing a mechanism where people can question. Because sometimes as the leadership, you may think, oh, this is how we need to go, but you need the buy-in of the entire organization. When that feedback mechanism exists and clarity is now a two-way street, then you would see the organization succeed. So at Credit Direct, what we try to do is say, hey, guys, this is the big picture. But we create a forum where you're saying, hey, where the guys can ask, why are we doing this? And why are we doing this now? And sometimes we find ourselves saying, hold on, this is a good question. Why are we actually doing this now? And we reflect, and then we come back. Sometimes we think, oh, this is how we should go. But from the team, you begin to hear the reasons why this may not be the best time to go about it now, or this may not be the best approach. So that collective feedback mechanism helps us, stay on the right path, but more importantly, makes the clarity in the minds of the people clear. And so there's no ambiguity as to where we are going and why we are going, where we are going to. And that has indeed helped us thus far.
Very powerful. So it sounds like one of the keys to effective strategy execution is not only knowing what I need to do, but also having engaged with it and questioned it and almost interrogated it so that I own it. How do you, $1 million question, I think, but how do you drive a culture where it's the right thing for employees to say why and question?
I think people are, when we talk about human resources, I argue that it's easily the most important resource in every organization. You find me a very successful organization, and you will see people who have a clear disposition what is expected of the organization. So for me, I think what makes it really important for everyone to buy in is at the end of the day, it's the people that can make an organization succeed or otherwise. If you get them to understand, if you get that clarity, there'll be success. If you don't, you may be meeting the other side of your bottom line.
Okay, so is it then helping leaders to understand the importance of people engaging, and when they ask why, that's a good thing?
Yeah, people, yes. I mean, sometimes when you become a leader, you wrongly assume that you're probably the most knowledgeable person in the room. I think that is not a correct position to take. I think the reason why you have hundreds of people in the organization is for you to be able to draw from the collective cerebral strength of the organization and fuse it into a winning approach, right? And so what makes it interesting is when there can be dialogue. I will always say to my guys, I'm always up for an energetic and passionate dialogue on what I have presented as the way to go, right? And I will say to my guys, let's not be passive about it. Let's be passionate about our convictions, because in someone else's comments, I may find the solution to that which was somewhat hazy in my mind. So I think true leaders are open to objective conversations. True leaders should be able to say, hey, okay, I didn't think it through this way, but what you've said has put better context to how I thought about it. And then at the end of the day, the organization wins.
Yeah, so it's having the confidence to get all brains to count, perhaps,
Absolutely.
and all brains need to contribute. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. An interesting comment about the sense that sometimes I agree that you're chatting with leaders, there's a sense that all the pressure is on you, you're the brain that counts, but actually you're saying that everybody should engage and be passionate and be part of it, and back to this energy notion. When we were chatting earlier, you talked about evolution, and we sort of touched on that change is always happening, and we hear it so much these days, don't we? The pace of change is quickening and so on. But it's interesting. How do you balance the notion of being, I'm not sure steady rock's the right phrase, but the notion of having a clear strategy and everyone knowing what they're doing, with the fact that could be evolving quite quickly? How do you help people navigate that?
I think from the get-go, we know the only constant in life is change. That you have a clear path does not mean how you choose to execute it is the only way to execute it. I think the reason why we have to be at work 9 to 5 is because there's an expectation that the business environment is fluid and very dynamic. Now, it is for you as the leadership of the organization to match the execution of your strategy with the fluidity or the dynamism that happens in the business environment. So you could actually see a very dynamic movement within the way you're seeking to achieve an objective. And that doesn't mean you've derailed, right? If you fail to plan, they say you've planned to fail. If you do not see when there's turbulence and react or proactively envisage that there could be turbulence, then you would have issues in business. So I think it doesn't take you off the path you're going, but there should be that understanding that for where we are in this moment, all things being equal, with the assumptions that we held at the point we made this decision, this is how we go. Should those assumptions become questionable, then it's your responsibility to gather everyone together again to say, hey guys, this is what we are seeing. And beyond, and I'm not talking about being reactive. Sometimes you may be left with no choice but to react, but we can, I expect that we continuously scan the environment. And in that process, we sometimes come up with proactive scenarios to say, what if this scenario happens? Or at every point in time, you're having scenarios that can potentially play out, and you're having some sort of a direction on how to, resolve issues should they come up around in every of those scenarios.
Thank you. And I'm interested, if I may, in, I suppose, coming back a couple of stages and thinking more about, as I coined it, getting all brains to contribute. And you talked about having the energy and getting everybody engaged and contributing. What concrete channels and ways would you say you have in Credit Directive of making it easy for people to feed back and question and engage?
Okay, I think first and foremost, the way the organization is structured, we have units, we have teams, units, departments, divisions, and of course we have the leadership team in the organization. And what we typically encourage is in whatever structure you find yourself in, we encourage everyone to be open. But every now and then we run independent surveys, anonymous surveys, so that people can bear their minds. I mean, one of such activities is actually going on currently in the organization. We actually meet tomorrow to discuss anonymous feedback, right? Because sometimes not everyone has the candor to speak openly on what they think. And we understand that we have different kinds of people in the organization. And so we allow for that anonymity, right? So that we can get as much feedback as we can, right? And like I said, tomorrow we'll be having an engagement in that regard so that we can filter through. Sometimes it's for lack of communication, people feel in some particular way. Sometimes it's that we've done a poor job at communicating whatever thinking pattern the organization has. And so we will continuously dialogue. We will continuously engage. We sometimes send out on a quarterly basis surveys We encourage divisional heads to meet regularly with the guys. At the leadership team, we meet every week or fortnightly, depending on the availability of time, but we never cease to engage. You know, like I said in my post, communication is the lifeblood of the organization. An organization that isn't communicating and getting the and allowing for the proper feedback loop will be in trouble in no time. Or you would have a disgruntled workforce. And if you agree with my argument that people make the organization, the happier the people, the more productive and more successful the organization will be. When you have lots of disgruntled people, when you have lots of disgruntled or unhappy people, there's a chance that you will be having you won't be achieving the results you set to achieve.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a beautiful segue, if we may, into thinking about happy people being powerful people in terms of contributing to optimal performance. And I know from when we chatted before, that felt like a really central area of belief and passion for you. How do you, $1 million question again, how do you drive an environment that leads to happy, engaged people in Credit Direct?
I think by being, what's the word now? By being honest and transparent, by being authentic, I think that's what I want to use with your people. The leadership at Credit Direct, I believe we're very authentic people, very passionate people, high energy and very cerebral people. But at the end of the day, we never walk around with an air that assumes we absolutely know everything. And I think our colleagues realize that. At Credit Direct, you will hear words like, oh, you're approachable, you're accessible, because everyone knows that at every point in time, I can say what I feel. Now, the reality is that you're not able to respond to absolutely everyone's thoughts, ideas, or feelings, but they believe and they are convinced that there is a channel for me to air my views, and somehow someone is looking at it. Now, one of the areas where we're even improving is to say, okay, where this information goes through our filtration process, and maybe someone's suggestion doesn't cut it, we're working on the mechanism that allows us to explain to that person why. It's not because, oh, the organization doesn't think you should, what you're saying makes sense, but because in this season, in the moment when we have resources available to us, this is why it can't work. Because we found out that very many times people make comments, send suggestions, and there's no response to it. And then they begin to feel that, you know what, what's the point saying anything at all, right? I believe very much that sometimes the key to unlocking innovative and forward-looking approaches will come from a statement that is made from someone that is outside the leadership team in an organization. And at every point in time, you should be listening out for it. We're very careful to ensure that the way we design our systems and processes allows for that level of inclusiveness or employee participation in absolutely everything we do. And then we have an effective filtration process that separates wheat from chaff. But again, we are able to tell people this is how and why we are not going with this at this point in time.
Yeah, and so important. And like you, I've had many times the importance of closing that feedback loop in terms of helping people feel listened to. Thank you so much. So it sounds like this is perhaps the key to some of the key to happy, engaged people is belief that you're listened to, an honest, authentic leadership. And you touched on a few topics around, I guess, what I might call humility and having the confidence as a leader to realize that no human has all the answers. Absolutely. That the clever person is the listening person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. And we've talked quite a bit about feeding back, challenging, engaging, thinking about the whys of strategy or what we're doing so that ideas are as robust as they possibly can be and robust as possibly can be. Collaboration and how people work together on projects can really make or break initiatives. How do you help people, particularly I'm interested in between different teams and areas, how do you help them to collaborate well to get the job done?
I think One of the things that how we approach work at Credit Direct in very many instances is very project-based. We have a very project-based approach to work. And thankfully, because it's project-based, different functional areas by default have to collaborate for us to achieve our objective. Now, one of the things I really enjoy doing is working with the leadership in the different divisions to create those project teams, because it affords us an opportunity to expose people who hitherto will be quiet and to bring them to the front burner, is to help check the behavioral patterns within teams, to help define and see the traits of successful teams and teams that are struggling a bit. And so we have this project-based approach to collaboration. Now, with the advent of a lot of collaboration tools, technology tools, it also makes it a lot more easy, where people can be bumped into a Teams meeting, for example, or you have SharePoint, you have places where people can collaborate in creating documents. But we see that technology has in a great way helped us to do things together even better. Credit Direct, for example, has physical locations in about 25 states across Nigeria with almost 800 employees spread across. And, without technology, it may be difficult to bring everyone and his ideas together. But there's something else we also do is, and something we started last year, is how we get everyone in the organization to participate in innovative projects that mixes it intentionally, creates project groups of everyone in the organization.
So
because
everyone from different, bringing different people together than would normally.
In different locations together with a view to achieve a specific objective. And we had the first experience of this last year, and it was short of being brilliant. People who haven't ever met themselves in the organization, people who didn't even know what some people were doing in the organization, had the opportunity to work together to achieve a common objective. And it was just a very beautiful event. And that also strengthened the cultural context within the organization that we're trying to achieve.
Thank you so much. And was this an event or more a series of projects?
It was a series of projects that accumulated into an event, right? And so we had put about 700 plus individuals within the organization into 25 groups, and then we had some sort of a competition where there were eventual winners, but we got everyone, regardless of your level or your positional standing in the organization, to participate. And there we saw new leaders, potential leaders emerge. We knew, certain people had certain skills that we didn't even realize. And this also helps in developing the right competency framework. This also helps us assess areas where there is need for support around learning and development. And it was just a really cool thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess. So I feel like so much of our conversation today has been, and please correct me, but from listening, I feel like a lot of it has been about the power of listening and valuing everybody's contribution. I don't know when that.
I absolutely, and I think it's something I believe deeply, and myself and my leadership team believe. I mean, right from the get-go, when we're hiring people to join us at Credit Direct, we're looking out for the best people available in the market at that point in time. So for you to come into our doors, we expect that you're adding value. I think we'll be doing ourselves a disservice if we do not have structures or systems that allow us suck in the collective values everyone can bring and weave it into, for lack of a better word, the right armory for us to achieve our business objectives. And so it's for us important that we listen to everyone.
Yes.
Right? And listen to everyone, because we are bringing in really, really high-class individuals. So the organization will be getting suboptimal benefits if it doesn't have a structure that allows for us to collectively tap into the cerebral capacities of these people. And like I said, weave it into the armory for us to achieve our corporate objectives.
Thank you. And as we've been chatting, you've mentioned just a couple of moments ago about technology and how it's been sometimes advantageous in collaboration. Teams, for example, the classic, and online meetings brings people together. It's often also criticised, isn't it, or challenged as a way that we have to adapt in adapting world to having a different way of interacting online than that which we did in person. I'm interested in particular in technology, and dare I say it, the buzzword at the moment, AI. How would you say that technology and AI are enablers for Credit Direct? Have you got any particular examples of how they've been valuable?
Yeah, I would say that I'll give a classic example, something that, I mean, we're a lending institution. We provide credits to customers. And in the last year, we pretty much doubled our customer base, or doubled our risk asset creation capabilities. Now, with the use of AI and credit decisioning systems, we're able to achieve a bigger scale without necessarily increasing the team. You know, very many a times people think when you talk about technology or you use artificial intelligence, you think it means, oh, someone's going to lose his job. I'm quick to say to them that when you're on a growth path and you want to achieve scale, the best way to do that is leveraging technology, not increasing the number of bodies in the organization. And so for us is strengthening the competencies of our people, but allowing us scale, leveraging technology and artificial intelligence. That's how we approach it at Credit Direct.
So it's allowing people to flourish and use their skills and using technology where it makes life easier.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to be selfish now, if I may, because we're coming up to the point where we promised we'd open the floor to questions, but I've got a couple more, so I shall hog the stage a little bit more just for a moment. And if it's okay, I'd like to ask you that tricky question about what one thing would you say you're most proud of that makes it a great place to work at Credit Direct?
For want of sounding like a broken record, I think the people of Credit Direct are everything. And I say this with the possibility that will say, oh, this is so cliche. Credit Direct is Credit Direct because of the people of Credit Direct. Take the people away, and then there's no organization. The collective synergy, the synergies that we have as a people, as a family, helps us achieve above and beyond what we've ever set out to do. And for me, that's the one singular thing I would not trade for anything as a leader of the business.
Thank you, Chukuma. Now, may I ask, as is the way with these things, I've done all the asking of questions. Is there anything else that you would like to share and you think it'd be powerful to share with everyone who's joined us?
I mean, I'm hopeful there'll be questions from those who are in attendance, but I'd just like to get your views on how, I mean, you're an expert at this. Are there use cases for how the role people play in the upward productivity of an organization? Are there studies that you could refer to or use cases you could just share on how people make the organization at the end of the day?
Well, absolutely. So I've been working in this field for 20 or so years. And I passionately believe in the power of people, but I've also seen very many times over the years how when we as a group of humans work effectively together, we deliver on the strategy as well as having a decent time as humans. And I spend quite a bit of my week working with organizations, working with their leaders and working to define their cultures and help embed their cultures. And I absolutely firmly believe that you can make a massive difference to how it feels to be in an organization and also the productivity by focusing keenly on the culture. And over the years, I've had the privilege of being with Great Place to Work for over a decade now, and previous to that, other organisations where I've managed to work with the same organisation year on year. And I've witnessed many organisations come, and I'm not sure if this is really answering your question, but it's nice to be asked a question. I've seen many organisations move from the place where their employee experience is not strong at all, put kindly, and then where they've in a really passionate way, focused on some of the really big ticket important items, things like strategy, clarity of direction, respect of people, empowerment, and so on. And systematically, and it clearly doesn't happen overnight, but over a period of years, they've moved their culture through to good and then through to great. And you see time and time again the positive correlation with that to high performance. And, you know, I think when I first started in the industry, people would be more likely to say, well, you know, is that causation? But now I think, thankfully, most senior leaders have seen the evidence and passionately believe, like I've heard you say, that actually it's the people that are the essence of this. If we all are engaged and work effectively together and have a decent experience, we will deliver beyond what one could have dreamt. So I'm not sure if I've answered it with a specific example, but
yeah, I think you have, Petrina. Thank you.
That's kind. But actually, absolutely, I've seen many examples over the years in all sorts of different sectors, and it takes love and care and massive energy and time to move to a really powerful position. Yeah, but it's worth doing on very many levels. Yeah. Well, shall we see if would anybody like to? I'm looking in the chat and I can't see any questions, but we'd really welcome it if you had any questions of us today. So I think we have Nufi. Do you have a question for us? You kindly have a hand up.
Yeah, I see, Petrina, I see there's a Nifemi Kolawale and there's Kemi Shonobi who have their hands raised up.
Ah, fantastic. George has changed the settings so that you can ask questions.
Okay.
Who would like?
Thank
you so much.
I couldn't find where to unmute.
Thank you for sticking with it.
Thank you for the session. I joined a bit late, but I got some of the things our guest talked about, and it's something that let's say I'm passionate about as a journalist. I cover stories around work and mostly workplace culture. So my question was about empathy and respect, because most of the elements for a good workplace culture are built around these two virtues, if I call it that. And I spoke to some leaders recently, and I got like some sort of humbling response, because they were like, being an empathetic leader that really wants to have a good workplace culture has its downside. And it's like they have to give a trade-off, that the trade-off is sometimes the business has to take a hit. And I'm like, so is it worth it? And they're like, they would rather be humans than do something against or they would rather be humans than chase business, because life is beyond that. So I want to ask the question of, how do you create a balance between being an empathetic leader or a person that really wants to pursue a good workplace culture and keeping your business running? Because it seems I'm an employee, but I never really realized that part, that these people are giving a trade-off at some point. So that's my question. I don't know if it was clear.
Thank you so much for your question. Well, I'm happy to chip in, but Chooks, what would you say?
Yeah, thanks, Kemi, for your question. I think there's that fine balance. Let me start this way. People sometimes misunderstand empathy for weakness. There are two different things. I think first and foremost, and I like the way you describe them as virtues, empathy and respect. I think mutual respect one for another is non-negotiable in a workplace that is going to be successful. And empathy pretty much says you putting yourself in the position of the next person, something you won't want to do to yourself. Why do you want to do it to the next person? I think the philosophy of empathy and mutual respect, if it is embodied in an organization, the organization will also do well when it comes to the harder hits around meeting profit objectives or its growth objectives. Again, I will emphasize, there's no profit objective conversation, growth objective conversation without people. And how you go about balancing it is essential. Again, if you attract, and I always say the starting point to building a great workplace is the kind of talent you allow into your fold. And that's why it's extremely important that you have a competent recruitment or onboarding process, as the case may be. If you have the right guys coming to the organization at the right time, and they buy into your shared values, or they have embodiments of those shared values, which is what I would always recommend, you will find that equilibrium really quickly. That an organization is capitalist, has a capitalist mindset, doesn't mean that it loses the touch of empathy. And I would always argue, one, to the people in the workplace, your colleagues, and then to your customers and stakeholders that are part of that connected circle, right? Should you be able to find that equilibrium, which I think every great organization should, then there will be success at the end of the day. If there's a disequilibrium where the focus is only people without the impact on the bottom line, it's not sustainable. If the focus is only on the bottom line without looking at people and other connected stakeholders, there'll be disequilibrium and you'll not be able to build a sustainable business. So how do you build sustainable businesses? Is finding that meeting point between profit, people, and connected stakeholders is what I would say.
Thank you so much. I'm very struck and interested by the concept that it's a trade-off, I suppose, because I spend so much of my working week saying that my sincere belief and experience, like you were saying at the beginning, Chukuma, that empathy might be sometimes traditionally perhaps described as a weakness, whereas I might see it as a superpower. One of those, it's one of the strong tools in the toolkit that a leader needs, along with a host of others, to be a really effective leader. I don't know, Femi, whether you have anything else to add. I think we can probably squeeze in a couple more questions, but I wondered if you would wish to respond.
Yes, Matrix have said, I like how diplomatic he was. But I don't know if most like chronic capitalist companies that are run in a capitalist nature, it's difficult to see empathy from the side of their leaders. So I've not worked in too many places, but I've worked in 3 places before, and I've related with leaders that are empathetic and those that are not. In fact, I've related with a leader that was empathetic and a manager that was not empathetic. And I saw the conflict. I saw the conflict between those people. The leader that was empathetic, at some point had to come in to shield me. Meanwhile, my direct manager was not. So he was running and like the true capitalist nature. That was the way he wanted it to be run. I saw the conflict. So I don't know if there's actually a way to create a balance in a company that is run like a capitalist and one where the leader is empathetic and have other things that shows that he wants to promote a good workplace culture. So that's just my concern. Is there? I don't know if
No,
they
so
can work together.
let me say this, right? And this is where the concept of shared values is very important, or where culture is very important, right? I believe that leaders will work with the managers in the organization to have the same, pull towards the same direction when it comes to shared values. If I were to use Credit Direct as an example, and I reeled out some statistics during my presentation, I would say we had a very successful financial year last year. We grew profitability by close to 70%, right? We doubled our portfolio. We doubled our customer base, right? We broke quite a number of internal records. And even within, we achieved a lot of recognition doing this. So by all standards, it was a very, very successful year. And it was also a very efficient year because despite inflationary pressure, we're able to bring down, say, the cost of running the business by almost 400 basis points. Now, I'm saying to you that we were able to do this, but the indices around people, engagement, productivity, we were also able to tick all those boxes. Our productivity index grew by almost 60%. Our employee net promoter scores bumped up by 33 points, right? And so I would not describe us as an unambitious, non-capitalist for in the strict sense of it, if you are looking at profits, growth, and things like that. But I think knowing that people will give their best when they feel respected, when they feel loved, where there's an environment that genuinely cares for them. I struggle when I hear people talk tough or toxic bosses who make life difficult for people that work with them. I wonder how they expect to get sustainable results from them. I think the reverse is the case. An organization that have been able to balance it out, and I just say we have that balance at Credit Direct, and we are reaping the benefits for having it that way. I'm sorry for the experiences you've had working with this kind of less empathetic bosses, but I do think there are lots of organizations in Nigeria where we've been able to define balance between empathy and the organization's growth objectives. And I think Credit Direct is one of such organizations.
Thank you both so much. We are just about 1 minute over, so if people will bear with me, I think we may have one more question and then ask our leader at Great Place to Work Nigeria, Otemere, to wrap up for us. But Nufi, as I invited you to ask our first question, I don't know if you're now able to ask a question and wish to. If you do, please dive in.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Kemish Shonobi. My hand was raised up.
Lovely to hear from you.
It's not so much a question, but more comments. First of all, I would like to say happy birthday to the great Chukuma. I've been listening in. I've also been watching your brand. I have a couple of people who work with you who are very close to my heart, and I can see the great work that you're doing. I think the reason I wanted to speak was this quote I just picked up from what you were saying, and I wanted to reiterate it. You know, what you said, being a great place to work is having great people at work. And it sort of ties back to the questions that I think it's Femi that spoke about, you know, where she said there was a mismatch between having a great leader who led with empathy and having a team supervisor who seemed not to have from that. And your response was quite apt around culture. And like I tell people, at the end of the day, something will give. So if in the long run, you're hiring people that represent the culture that you want the company to be known for, the ones that don't fit in will sort of be weeded out. So I just wanted to say, well done. I loved your session. Happy birthday once again, and share the goodies our way. All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And well done, Dr. Kamadi. It was a beautiful session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, well, thank you all so much for your care. There are also some wonderful other questions I'm afraid we couldn't get to, but I hope we touched on some of the topics. Like one was around how do we quantify the return investment in the people and technology? And I think, Chukuma, you gave us a number of nice examples about how the two go hand in hand. I'd love to carry on chatting all day, but I feel for reasons of respecting everybody's time, we should perhaps say From me, thank you so much to everybody for your wonderful care and attention and contribution, and mostly to you, Chukwuma, for your wonderful contribution and inspiration. But over to you, Otemere, if I may.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Chukwuma and Petrina, for a great session. I must mention here that Credit Direct is one of our platinum certified companies, Great Workplaces. What that means is that they have a score of at least 90% around employee experience, around the great culture that they have in the organization. I wouldn't end this session without sharing a slide, and this slide probably is going to be helpful also to Femi, who had a question around capitalism. Just allow me just a second to share my screen. I don't know whether you can see my slides.
PowerPoint, yes, perfect.
Excellent. We had done a survey, conducted over a 24-year period analysis in the US, where we had compared the 100 best companies, great workplaces to work for in America, compared to the Russell 1000 and also 3000 companies also in America. And over a 24-year period, we saw a return on investment 3 times higher. And my point was the fact that these are capitalist companies that are so into achieving those objectives, those financial goals, well clearly spelled out. But from our analysis, that shows that companies that have a great workplace culture show clear return on high return on investments compared to those companies that are not really fully into having good work experience in those organizations. And so I was also very happy when Chukwuma began to reel out all the achievements over the financial year, and how also to that is tied into the fact that once again, we've been able to collaborate the fact that a great work culture helps in growing the business of companies. And so once again, also achieve these objectives. We are so appreciative of what you have done at your organization, Chukwuma. You also, in the final note, you also talked about the fact that the leader is not usually the most intelligent one in the office or in the organization. And it brings to mind a podcast coming in a couple of weeks from now, being run by our international office, that talks about the vulnerability of leadership, where leadership understands the fact that it can be vulnerable to be successful at what it does. Once again, thank you very much for this great session. Looking forward to having another session next month on the 7th of March, to be precise. We'll come back to you with more details about that session. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm wishing you a great year ahead, Chukwuma.
Thank you, Patrina. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Take care all. Cheers.